When I realized that's what could get you a following on social, not just like being a supermodel and drinking coffee, I was like, wow, I could just teach and that gets views.
Hello and welcome to the 9 to 5 Quitters Club, the podcast uncovering the creator entrepreneurs at the forefront of a work revolution, chasing their passions on their own terms and calling the shots when it comes to how they spend their time. Today we're speaking with author and creator Lauren Kay. Lauren has been starting businesses as long as she can remember. She found her home with her current platform where she teaches other authors how to get published and grow their own businesses. In this episode, we learn how Lauren turned her own experience into tangible products.
Those were always the top questions I was getting, and I couldn't find anything online that was similar to how I'd approached it.
Lauren's passion to help make the publishing industry better for authors.
This is a career, and a lot of the disconnect comes from this lack of middle ground and people thinking they can just like jump into the deep end before they've learned how to swim.
And make sure to stick around till the end for some critical advice on how to navigate social media when building a business you truly care about.
I'm not out there trying to get people to like my face and my voice. This is a business instrument. I'm helping people. It's not tied to my personal identity.
This episode is a powerful dive into how you can distill a valuable learning experience while pursuing your passion into a business that can sustain you for years to come. Let's dive in, and we hope you enjoyed this conversation with Lauren Kay. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to breaking out of this convention of the 9 to 5?
I have worked for myself pretty much forever. So back when I was in college and I was 19, I put up a few ads on Craigslist for babysitting jobs. And I'm the type of person who never says no to anything. So when I got 40 jobs, I ended up starting a nanny agency connecting New York City families with babysitters, despite the fact that I was still more or less young enough to be babysat myself. I was just thrown into the world of entrepreneurship. I had these very distinct memories of hiding under the staircase at my college's cafeteria and negotiating with like people who ran banks what the was going to be for their babysitter. So that was a great intro. And then after that, I ran a dating startup. So I did that a little after I graduated college for a few years. I took that through the Tech Accelerator or Y Combinator. I learned a ton. Number one, do not start a dating company. At 26, I was completely burnt out. That was 7 years of just never taking off a day in my life. And I learned a lot, but decided to slow it down. And I'd always loved teaching and tutoring. So I took on private clients and I kept working for myself. And so tutoring was pretty much 2-3 hours a day. So that left me with a lot of free time to pursue a lifelong goal of writing a book. So I sat down and I started writing it and I gave up and many times. And
that's a common story. Yeah.
After a few years, I finally had a book that I was really excited about and I started pitching it to agents. Took my business background to my pitching experience and I ended up with 8 offers, which was really exciting. And I signed with my dream agent and she pitched my book and did not get a deal. So I wrote another one really quickly during the pandemic and she ended up getting me a great deal for that. And then I took a real job for a year. I call it like cosplaying at a 9 to 5 just to see what I was missing. And it was actually like quite a delight. It was much slower paced. I had a lot less to do. I had a lot less stress. Then I had my baby and I was like, I can't go back to that. Like I need to go, what am I doing at this point in my life? I need to go back to having control over my own hours. And so I got to spend most of my daughter's first year with her. I was working an hour or 2 a day and then spending the rest of the time with her. And it was just this magical experience. And then it wasn't. And she was a toddler. And then was like, what am I doing with my life? So I ended up on TikTok trying to promote my book. And I ended up talking all about my experience of pitching my book using my business background and getting my offers and using my tutoring experience of teaching in like very short, fast-paced little segments. It all came together in one and my account grew really quickly. And I realized it could help me sell books, but much more exciting to me, I could build a business off of it. Because in the past, businesses were always really limited by you need lots and lots of new leads and clients and everyone needs to find out about you. And social media solves that puzzle. So I went all in on content creation. I did that for about 6 months. Then I found out about Teachable and online courses, and I created a course on the strategies that I used to land my agent, because those were always the top questions I was getting, and I couldn't find anything online that was similar to how I'd approached it. And then after that, everyone wanted to know how to find an editor or book coach, because I talked all about how helpful mine were. And so I launched an agency of editors, which I was able to use my babysitting agency and the matchmaking agency that I ran, those skills to put that together. Within months, I had a full-fledged company, and now I have a team of 10, which sounds like a lot, but everyone is very part-time. It's more like a team of 3, but 10 super phenomenal part-time people based all over the world. Because I launched a second arm of it, supporting fellow moms and freelancers and creators who really want to break free of their 9 to 5, but don't exactly know how to put all the pieces together.
I love this. Of those things, an educator, a writer, all of these hats you wear, is there one that you identify with the most if people ask you what you do? What are you going to be doing in your late 80s? What is that identity you carry later into your life?
Yeah, I think for right now, I very much consider myself a director of many moving pieces, whether I am directing myself on camera, which is one of my least favorite things to do, but I do it, so I have my B-roll, or I'm directing all of the amazing people that I work with. It's just a lot of problem solving, which is my favorite thing to do. When I think to my 80s, I see myself as, in a circle, going back to writing. I see writing as like the quieter side of what I love to do. And that has been on hold while I'm directing and throwing everything out there. But I love that I have that. And I see myself, once everything is in motion, which will take a few years at least to get the business to where I want it to be, it's to go back to those roots of the quiet writing, which right now, like, my cortisol levels are not calm enough for me to be able to get to.
You said you were always building your own business or always working for yourself. Was there a light bulb moment or a point in time where you realized that's what you wanted to do versus just working for other people?
Yeah, I guess initially I sort of went in accidentally, but I think it was really probably when I took part in Y Combinator. And I was just surrounded by so many other entrepreneurs, and you're pitching on stage and you're talking about this big vision. I drank the Kool-Aid, and I drank it too much before I knew that all I was doing. But I knew, like, this is it. Just getting to, if you're going to work the majority of your waking hours, work on what you love. But more importantly, you get to work with the people you love, because you get to pick everyone that you work with.
You talk about identifying as a director, and compared to some creators I talked to, you seem to have had quite a vision for what you wanted to do. But where the heck did you get that? Did someone tell you this is how you do that?
I think part of it was seeing the different models that different creators were doing. And then part was thinking back to what I'd done in the past and where I had really dreamed of being. I think going back to what my dreams initially had been, but reframing them now that I understood more about the creator economy, now that I had seen what others had done, and just knowing that I want to reach as many people as I can with what I have to share in terms of the things that I've learned, but also just the failure and experiences that I've gone to. I love talking about failure and putting that out there and making people feel less alone.
We'll get right back to the conversation with Lauren after this brief message. This podcast is brought to you by Teachable and therefore has no sponsors. So we just wanted to take a moment to encourage you to go follow Lauren on Instagram, where she's using her experience to help freelancers reach their first 100K year. Creators like Lauren are the reason this podcast exists, so supporting them helps support our ability to bring you more of their stories and lessons. You can find Lauren on Instagram at 100K with Lauren K, which is also linked in the show notes or description wherever you're watching or listening. Okay, now back to the episode. You're working in an industry that has been through the ringer the last few decades, book publishing and just how that all works and people make a living off of it. You're also actively working to create a new system that other people can use. What was the dysfunction or the problem you saw in the industry that you then went and tried to change?
biggest problem is how opaque it is, how difficult it is to find information on how to go from having an idea for a book to seeing it on the shelves. And there either wasn't enough info out there or there was too much info and often conflicting information. So for me, when I'm learning something new, I need them broken down like step by step, really clear steps, but also manageable. Like they can't massively trigger my anxiety. And so that's just naturally the way I teach, not like you have to do a million things at once, but just let's focus on this one piece of a time. Like, here's how you do your first draft. Here's how you outline it. Here's how you find a critique partner. Here's how you do the second draft. Don't worry about all the other things you have to do. Let's just focus on one at a time, because if you actually think about everything you need to do to write a book and break the odds and get it published, you'll be paralyzed emotionally.
I hear from a lot of creators that they go out to make what they wish they had. Was that your mentality?
It's definitely what I wish I had when I was starting out. I think first and foremost, the community aspect. I didn't know other writers and I felt really alone in what I was going through. It all felt like very personal and unique to me when clearly it's not. And that's why my videos tend to do well, because so many are going through it. But I just wish that I had like friends the whole time and just people to exchange pages with. And that's why everything I do is grounded in community, from comments on my post to the free critique partner connection that I run to I have like 7 different Slack workspaces that I run.
Do you have like a hot tip for any author or aspiring author that's listening and wants to pitch themselves? I do think pitching yourself can be one of the hardest things about making money off your art. If you're pitching to a publisher, what's your number one piece of advice? You
need a fully complete manuscript that a lot of people go in thinking, oh, I have this really great idea. And I'm sure you do. And a lot of people do. And because of how competitive it is, agents are almost always just considering fully polished manuscripts that read as if they could be on the shelves. We're biased when it comes to our own book babies. You're going to want to get outside feedback on that. And often you're going to want to have been writing for years before you end up seeing, even hearing back at all from agents, as opposed to just radio silence. It's really hard when you're in the beginning, the first few months, the first year, the first 2 years. Like no part of my brain could have taken that in from anyone telling me, no matter what you do, it's still too early. Either your prose isn't there, or your structure isn't there, or your world building is there. Just all the things don't magically appear at once when you first start writing, but you're getting closer and you're constantly improving. You need to keep going. You should only pitch when it's fully polished. And then because the pitch, as you said, is so different from writing the book, that's something I advise writers to spend weeks on, to get 8-10 rounds of feedback from critique partners or beta readers or editors. It's so short, but it's sneaky in how hard it can be to do right.
Sometimes you can do fake job interviews just to get feedback about how you're doing. Is that something you can reach out to a publisher for? Be like, I'm not pitching, but will you tell me what you think of my pitch?
For money, unfortunately.
Fair, because it's their time. Yeah.
I think a lot of people get really frustrated. Agents don't give you any feedback. But you have to remember, most agents often live in big cities, are making really, really low salaries. And their full-time job, the only way they're making money is off of their writers who are making book deals. So when they're looking at the slush pile, which is people who are pitching them, that's them basically doing volunteer work. And they're going through 100 or hundreds a week. So they barely have time to read them all, much less give feedback.
And it sounds like still at that point, you're not asking for critique on the book. You're asking for critique on your pitch, right?
If you are meeting with an agent or editor and paying for their time, yes. But the whole book is really, at the end of the day, you can have the best pitch in the world. If your book isn't fully ready, you're not going to get a deal. So you definitely want feedback on that book. And that's, once again, you're using critique partners, you're using editors, you're using friends, beta readers, wherever you can get that feedback from.
Say you're through this process, you have a killer book, you have a great pitch. I'm sure, like many industries like this, you still are going to get a lot of rejection. Do you have any psychological, mental health tips for just dealing with hearing no a bunch about your art? It's
atrocious. I went through like some of the hardest emotional times. There's also the pandemic, but dealing with rejection. And I got more agent offers than maybe anyone I've heard of. And I think it was also just because I really overdid my pitching. And it still felt like I'd just been rejected over and over because I was still rejected by way more agents than those that made offers. What has helped me and what I try to share is I took part in a mentorship competition where I was now on the other side, acting as an agent, choosing a writer. And I had like 100 or 200 writers pitch to work with me, and I only got to choose one. And I went through these books, and book after book was phenomenal. It wasn't that they were bad. It was I could only choose one, and therefore I was choosing it based on my taste. I love Coke Zero. I love Gilmore Girls. I love Taylor Swift. I love certain styles of writing. Many books far better than what I could write, but it just wasn't necessarily the book that I thought I could help out the most. And the same thing is happening with agents. They're probably only making offers on 1% of the books that they feel are really strong books. And just like really understanding that. Or saying like, you get to walk into the bookstore. You can only buy one book. Does that mean you think all the other books are trash? No, it's just that you can only pick one.
That's such good advice. I wish I had heard that early in my life as a musician. Even just to go through the thought practice of going into a bookstore and being like, I'm the agent. What do I choose and why? Would have helped me be more empathetic to all the people I thought were getting in my way. So if you had a magic wand, what's the one thing about your industry that you would change tomorrow?
If I had a magic wand, I think there would be a middle ground between just starting out, not knowing what you're doing, versus like getting an agent. Maybe there would be like a bunch of legitimate accredited schools for becoming a writer that weren't MFAs that cost, I don't know, 60 grand a year, that were affordable programs with lots of opportunities for scholarships and grants. And that just taught the fundamentals of writing, because I very much believe this is a career. And a lot of the disconnect comes from this lack of middle ground and people thinking they can just like jump into the deep end before they've learned how to swim. And then feeling incredibly disappointed and disheartened and wanting to learn more, but not knowing where to go, which is why they come to my page. There's just isn't that much that exists in a formal way towards how do you actually learn to write. And yes, it is an art, but it's also something that requires like real skills and things that you can learn.
It sounds like then you are the magic wand with what you're building.
A teeny piece. I have one course on letting an agent. I do not have a whole school of learning how to write.
But I do love, I love the sentiment of what you're saying. I've heard it time and time again with creators that they're basically trying to fill the gap of the lack of education that exists or the access to that. So that's why I love interviewing creators and talking about that. Switching gears a little bit, I know wealth is subjective to every individual, but you have created the means of generating your own income. What is that like, and how does that kind of affect your mindset just about how you live your life to be in control of your income generator?
There's real pros and cons, right? When you work for yourself, it's harder to take off, to take vacation days, because if you're not working, you're not growing, you're not making more money. But I think because I have worked for myself for so long, and I know that is like a very tricky mentality to fall into, I try to not think in like a smaller picture way. I think I know I'm working on the right things long term. I know these things are going to pay off long term. I don't beat myself up over slower weeks or slower months. I give myself vacation days. I give myself days off to be with my daughter when she's sick, which unfortunately with a 2-year-old is a lot. And I'm working to try to get to a better place where it's like, it's the dream of working for yourself, but you truly have flexible hours. But it's a constant battle with myself that I deal with a lot in therapy of, even if I could work fewer hours, would I? And what would I do at that time?
Yeah, I'm always surprised with creators, and maybe not. I say I'm surprised, but I'm not really surprised with the human spirit to want to keep doing stuff. But even just financially, it's funny to me that creators will be making objectively enough to stash it away, live off the interest, and just chill, but they just keep going. Do you have like a financial end goal in mind? Is there a certain point where you shift the way you're running your business because you don't need the money anymore? Or is it just you keep operating into continuum to build the business because you love that as well?
Yeah, there's not so much a financial endpoint I'm shooting for because I feel like it's so easy to always increase that, especially as a parent living in New York. No amount of money I ever will feel like, oh, I've got it made
for the next 20 years at least, right?
Yeah, that's a trap that is easy to fall into. So for me, it's more of a getting to different goalposts of, okay, I can feel really confident signing off at 3 p.m. I can feel confident that my business will be in a great place in 6 months, even if I don't focus on growth. And yeah, it's something I ask myself all the time in terms of what am I working for, or else you'll just continue working on forever and not being super happy. So for me, I would love to get to a place, people who like take vacations like every 2 or 3 months, like real.
Yeah.
I've never done that. And a lot of it is financial, but a lot of it is I just never took time off like that. So I would love to just have a family, and kids get breaks all the time from school. Then parents have to deal with that, that they don't get that time off. I would love for it to be like, oh, my kids have spring break, they have winter break, they have summer break, they have another summer break. And all those breaks, we just go on vacation. Like that's the dream that I'm working towards.
I want to get a chance to talk about what you hinted at the very beginning. Having been an artist and a musician myself and now having a business and working for Teachable, it can be really difficult to navigate the process of making money off of your art and separating like what is building a business versus what is your art and what is it worth. You start posting it. Do people like it? It's also personal. Working with authors, what's the biggest mental blocker that you find yourself encountering while training them to be able to build a business around their art?
I think a big blocker is not everyone does want to build a business around their art. And I think that's completely fine. If your goal isn't business related, right? If your goal is, I want to get a big book deal, I want to make a lot of money off of this, then I say, okay, you should probably focus on the business aspect. But if you are like, I need the story to be told, it's the story of my soul, even if only 3 people read it, that will change 3 people's lives, which will change mine. I say, great. You don't need the business stuff I'm teaching. You don't need the business stuff anyone's teaching. You go tell that story. But there is definitely a lot of stigma towards doing anything related to money when it comes to writing, because writing is an art. And I get that. But I think, unfortunately, so many people's goals are to get published with these big 5 publishers, which are big companies and which have bottom lines and operate like businesses. And so I just try to make it more transparent. And I am also always pretty transparent about the fact that I run a business that makes money. This is not a nonprofit, but because I run it in that way, I see it as being more sustainable. I get to employ other people from all over the world, fellow moms, give them flexible careers, and build something bigger that's able to help more people than if I were just doing this out of the good of my heart 5 hours a week.
A lot of creators I've talked to talk about how getting good at writing was how they got good at content. Was that an easy transition for you to go from writing to making content? Do you still think about your content as being writing based? What was your process there?
Yeah, I think that's such a big reason that I fell in love with content creation pretty early on, was because I was like, oh, this is the writing that I'm better at. Fiction writing is hard for me. It's hard for me to like invent worlds and people, and I just get very stuck and very like anxious, and I'm like, oh, this is terrible. Versus the kind of copy that you write for emails and for Instagram, I just write it the way I talk. And to me, it just comes naturally, the way that I guess fiction comes to a lot of people. And I love doing it. I can sit and write Instagram captions for 2 hours without remembering, like, I don't know, to get up or like feed myself through the day. And so that part, I did feel like that came easily. And that's why I was like, this whole business makes sense to me because it involves the skills that I feel strong in, but also that I really enjoy doing. And so that's also how I came to, this is what I want my career to be, Sorry, I forgot to mention that early on too. I had just reread Designing Your Life, and it talks about don't just pick a career path or don't just pick skills you're good at, but what are the ones that get you into a state of flow that you could just do all day? And that for me is like writing copy, making spreadsheets, building Squarespace sites. And that's like more or less my business.
It's interesting you say that content was easy for you because I sure think a 90-second script is way harder than long-form content, but...
Yes, it definitely depends on what it is. Anything talking head, YouTube videos, 90-second talking, it's a lot. It's a lot of stress to get every word right. But what's trending, Instagram is basically just like visual Twitter now. You're writing 200 words. And that, like, I love 200-word stories. So those are fun.
One reason I'm in love with this space is, and it's so interesting to me, this is just a hypothesis. I don't have proof necessarily. Amidst, like, all the different trends and ways you can stand out in social media, education continues to rise to the top and be a hack for building a following. Do you have any just sense of why education resonates so much and almost like hacks the algorithms to be present in our culture?
Yeah, I think people always just want to learn and improve. And when I realized that's what could get you a following on social, not just like being a supermodel and drinking coffee on the beach, that does still work. But if you don't have that in your toolkit, which I don't, I was like, wow, I could just teach and that gets views. There's definitely parts of your brain that it triggers when someone's teaching you something and you're like, oh, I need to know this. And therefore you watch it longer and you save it. And those are all metrics that the algorithms care about. But yeah, I think there's just got to be some like innate desire on our part to always learn and get better at things. And also it's you are providing something for someone. You are not just showing them your beautiful house, which is providing them aesthetically pleasing entertainment. But it's that you are making content for something else. And that's what I'm always teaching others. What I'm teaching about teaching is to think about what your audience wants to see and not necessarily just what you want to put out there.
We'll be right back after this short message. This podcast is brought to you by Teachable, the platform that empowers you to share your knowledge, engage deeply with your audience, and earn, all on your own terms. Because you're more than your 9-to-5, and Teachable has everything you need to grow the business or side hustle you think about while you're at your day job. You can get started turning your knowledge into a business for free at Teachable.com. That's Teachable.com, which is also linked in the show notes or description, wherever you're watching or listening. Now let's get back to the episode. You played with doing a dating app and others, so you had an entrepreneurial spirit outside of education. Was there something deeper too, just of what you get out of that, why you chose sharing your knowledge as the base of your business?
Yeah, I'm just the type of person that always wants to be giving advice and just gets really fulfilled when people take it and it helps them. And even when I think back to the dating company, so much of it, God, I'm like gagging as I say this, was like me, 23 years old, teaching people about what they're doing wrong with dating. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons that company didn't work out. But regardless, there were some things that I was teaching that weren't completely wrong. And that was just in general, people have not the right mindset when it comes to who they're looking for on paper versus who they actually want to be with. And it just be more open, be less shallow, be more open. That I still stand by. I love teaching things that I struggled with in the past and being like, oh, I figured this out. Let me break it down for you.
We live in, unfortunately, at least in America, a culture where educators are undervalued. Working in this space has been wild for me because all the teachers I talk to and work with every day make pretty darn good living. Do you have a sense of kind of what the future of the creator economy, the impact it might have on just our perception of teachers or the value of teachers in our society?
I have always thought, and I love that you're asking this, but about how teachers are underpaid. And it's any field where it's primarily female. Same with writing and editors and agents. The work is underpaid and undervalued. It's like an extension of motherhood. Like, shouldn't you just want to teach the children? That comes from the goodness of your heart and not the fact that you need to pay your bills and also maybe go on vacation. And it's something that I had always thought about doing. I was like, oh, I'd be a great teacher. I would love doing it. And it's something I never seriously considered because I was like, the pay is terrible. And I will take the same skills from teaching and apply it elsewhere. I love that there are teachers who are becoming creators who are finally making what they deserve to make, because some teachers, hardest jobs in the world, and are making less than almost anyone, which is so disappointing.
I had never thought about that like that. Curious just how you respond, in a similar vein, how you respond to the phrase, those who can't do, teach.
I think that, once again, comes from the fact that teaching is so underpaid. So people are like, why would someone teach? Versus it's actually such a rewarding, fulfilling career. And so for me, I have figured out how to make it an income that supports my life through private teaching and now through creating. And so I do it because I love it.
In the business you're building, do you think much about like the legacy you're going to leave or what that impact would be?
Oh, no. The only thing I really think about is like, at what point will my daughter get old enough to see the videos I'm making? And I love being a creator. I love the creator economy. I never want my daughter on social media. And it's just something it's like a problem for future me to figure out.
Do you ever think of the body of work you're building, though, just from a like intellectual property perspective, as something you could hand down to your daughter? Or do you think it requires you to be present to keep it going?
I think for, a lot of creator businesses, it is tied to you a lot. I don't necessarily see myself as handing this down to her, but I hope to hand down like the fact that you can do what you're passionate about. And if she hits like an adult age where social media hasn't destroyed her brain and is like, I want to teach online too, and she's got like a really strong mental health base, and then sure. But I would just want her to see this and be like, I can do what I want to do. I don't have to get a 9-to-5, and I can follow my passions if I do it by working really hard and thinking about it strategically with a business mindset.
So wrestling with that kind of, what would you call it? Just that dichotomy that exists with the creator industry, that you have to use social to some extent. I think it's overblown sometimes how much you need it to make a decent living. But depending on your business, you have to. If your daughter came to you with that entrepreneurial spirit and wanting to do that, would you try and find another way? Or do you just think we all have to accept that as a necessary challenge or evil of building a business like this?
I think it would depend on her age, but I think with like many things, like I think it would be fine at a certain age for her to drink alcohol, but not before she's 21. There are things that we are drawn to, but that sometimes we are too young of an age to be able to handle. And still, I'm 35. I've been on social for a while. It still is a slot machine. I'm still addicted to it. It still does things to my brain that I do not like. And I see it as a necessary evil for the business, but I still don't feel mentally strong enough to be able to handle it.
It sounds like you have found a way with content creation to still find a joy in the process.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. And to me, like when I am shooting videos, B-roll, like I just feel like I'm like a paid actor. I don't do it personally. I'm not out there trying to get people to like my face and my voice. I'm just like, this is a business instrument. I am teaching. I'm getting a certain number of views, a certain number of follows. I'm helping people. But this isn't like, it's not tied to my personal identity. And that is why I think at a younger age, it's so much harder. Our brains aren't built for this, for millions of people to be judging us and assigning us a value before we have done that ourselves.
Do you have any advice for managing that beast of feedback you are asking for, but not really?
Yeah, hire a team. When you get to the point, have people who review the comments that come in, because I don't think anyone should have to read these, no matter how much of a perfect angel you are. There are going to be people who say atrocious things because that's the internet. And then also have creator friends, because they understand the unique beast that you're dealing with. And it's just, when I have harder days, there's no one who helps me more than fellow creators. And I have a lot of creators on my team. And so that's always really helpful.
Before we wrap up, I have a couple just rapid fire questions for you. We can go really quick here. What's your favorite author these days?
Sally Rooney.
What's a book you want to write but haven't yet?
Oh, yeah. I've been a fifth of the way through a draft for years on two women going through very different parent journeys.
What's your number one tip for becoming a good writer?
Read more. Read until those words come through your own fingers.
Ooh. And who's a celebrity or big creator that you think should have an online course and that you would buy?
Jeremy Jordan. One time I just emailed him and I did not hear back. I feel like everyone would just want to pay to hear him sing.
Lauren has proven that the combination of entrepreneurial spirit and a deep drive to help others can become both a source of fulfillment as well as an incredible way to make a living. We hope you learned as much as we did today, found something you can apply to your life, and if nothing else, were inspired by Lauren's story to take a hard look at your 9-to-5 work and make sure that the way you work is working for you. If you want to join the thousands of other creative entrepreneurs who are building an income out of their impact, click the link in the description to join the club and learn how Teachable can help you do the same. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out our recommended next episode linked here. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.